future of reality capture is what I think has brought everyone out today. We've got some great panelists here. I'm going to walk through one by one, let them kind of introduce themselves, give their background, and why you think you're such an expert on the future. And we'll check back in maybe another 10 years and see how accurate you are.
Oh, yeah. You have us on tape, right?
Yes, we'll do it at our 20 year.
Is the card.
All right. Let's start with Mr. Matt Bird.
All right. Thank you. Is this my?
It should be.
Okay, good. Yeah, all right. Matthew Bird. And so short background would be, grew up in land surveying with a father as a land surveyor. So naturally I got on a field crew and drug around the field. Ended up staying in the profession and started scanning in about 2009. And as a young, innovative person, they were like, how about you learn this thing? So got into scanning, and as soon as I got into it, I was like, okay, that's my focus, that's my career forward, was, seeing the technology, its capabilities, starting to use it and expand outside of business we'd ever even worked in. We were doing a lot of oil and gas surveying, and so we started in facilities, but we started getting branched into things we'd never even thought about before, in the building side, in the forensic side, in mining, a lot of different industries. So, from that point forward, my focus has been on what are all the reality capture technologies available, how can they be applied in different industries to solve different problems. And I think that's a very broad overview. So, I guess the last question about thinking about the future, over the years, utilizing different types of technology and partnering with a lot of companies around the country across a lot of industries, I think is what makes my perspective maybe unique, is that it's not even just me, it's just I'm learning from so many other people. I've got a lot of that information in my head, and so I'm trying to continue to innovate and push and get feedback from different industries so we can adopt and drive together.
Very cool. All right, Mr. Kelly Cohn.
Went to school to be an architect, discovered that wasn't a very lucrative profession, and then went into technology and implemented first Revit, and then, what was next after that? I think it was technically Inifia, and then Navisworks, and then started growing a team at a big contractor, a general contractor firm. Grew the team to about 20 people. Sylvia was on my team. Small world. And ran our laser scanning services, Scan to BIM group. And so I started scanning, what was that, 2007, I think, in 2008, first job in scanning in Dallas. And been doing it a lot. And then left about 5 years ago to go to the dark side. And now we're at Clear Edge 3D. Not Autodesk, just to be clear, that'd be really dark. Anyway, went to work at a small startup that's Clear Edge 3D, that then got acquired by a larger company, TopCon, and so they went back under a corporate umbrella, which is interesting. We make cool software that does fun stuff with laser scans, and so that kind of informs my perspective. I specifically wanted to get into the software side because I kind of got tired of waiting for tools to slowly filter down into our industry from all the other industries that get it first because they have more money. And I kind of wanted to get into making some cool new tools that help us be more productive and efficient. So, not sure if that answers the question, but it's good enough.
I think it works. That works. And Sylvia.
All right. My name is Sylvia Smith, and I run a small firm called RC Markets. My background is in structural engineering. Always wanted to be an engineer, and moved to the US with that role in mind. And I realized very shortly, very fast, that it was a little bit boring, and there was not a lot of diversity in terms of workflows given a great opportunity to work for the same general contractor that Kelly worked for, and just from the get-go, I was able to work on an amazing project for the GSA where we documented, I believe, close to 4.8 million square feet. And so that's when I started, scanning and learning about reality capture tools. And that was probably 2010, something around that time. And since then, we're doing about 60-ish to 70 projects a year that involve some sort of reality capture tool and process to be able to inform both the design team as well as the construction teams. So about 3 years ago, I decided to go on my own, start my own company. I had a great opportunity with my previous employer because it made me quite of a generalist. I was able to test a lot of tools, try a lot of processes, but wanted to focus more on the documenting historic buildings and improving that process over time. And I guess what makes me qualified to talk about the future is, I own a business, so kind of that comes with the territory, right? You need to look a little bit in the future to make sure that you are not caught off guard. So hopefully, we can make some good predictions here that will help us maintain our businesses and give you some value.
Great. And before we dive into the panelist discussion, I just want to, Ravi, can you hold up your book there? It's a construction book. Everyone see that? So today we're going to be asking if anyone can guess Sylvia's accent. We're giving away Ravi's book.
This is signed by kids, so it doesn't go anywhere.
Okay, well you can still try and guess his accent. Anyone?
That's not fair.
They're from there too.
Oh, okay. Let's hear it. Or should we disqualify them?
No. I think the book would be a good, some good information for it.
Ravi, are you okay with parting with your book?
Oh, yeah.
There's others in the other room.
Here.
There's one right here.
Here's one here. Did he guess? What is it? Josh is going to get one.
It's a Romanian accent.
Is he right?
I mean, I should have said good afternoon, everybody, and try to make it a little bit thicker.
Very good. Congratulations, sir. I think Josh is going to fetch you a book.
And
He's got one.
last
Let's have a round of applause. All right.
So technically, it's a Romanian Georgian accent.
It's blended. Yeah.
So
You all
have the book.
Now, you said the last one was the last one, so you're pretty good. He's back there. All right, so I'm moderating this thing, so I've got a list of questions, but I want to go to the audience. What do you guys want to hear about the future?
You get the microphone now.
what concerns do you guys have about the future?
Trying to think how to articulate my question. We're seeing a lot of automation right now in reality capture. I guess just generally curious to hear what your guys' thoughts are on that, and looking into the future, where do you see that going in terms of evolution? And do you think that's something that will stay around for a while, or could be replaced by something else? Or what are your thoughts on automation in reality capture?
In terms of feature extraction, or what kind of automation?
Primarily the newer automation I'm seeing is the capture process itself, right? So, in the exhibit hall, we're seeing a lot of drones that are automated. Skydio was one of the first we all heard about with that. Now folks are strapping laser scanners and Velodyne pucks to drones, and flying them all around. We've got Spot, you know, dressed in different colors and equipment. And personally, I don't know if that's the long-term, you know, real solution for a construction job site. I think it's good technology, but I'm curious to hear from what you guys think.
Sure. I mean, we're ClearEdge is a vendor of automation tools, though we haven't gone into that particular branch of automation. But I mean, automation is kind of a natural process in any industry. You know, particularly the more money gets into it, the more people look to automate it. I think, you know, from a looking forward to the future standpoint, I think a lot of people get caught up or misunderstand the point of automation a lot of times. Because we always like, oh, the automation tools are going to replace people doing this, right? And you can look at industries that are far more automated than ours, and guess what? They're still people. They're still doing things. People are good at some things, computers are good at other things. That will, you know, probably still be true for at least another, you know, 10 decades. So, you know, or 5 at least. But anyway, without going down that branch, you know, I think what we're going to see is those automation tools supplementing people, making them more efficient, more effective. You know, so Spot's probably, you know, I think the whole scanner on a Spot thing is kind of silly because it's basically the world's most expensive and ineffective tripod. It's a cool idea. It looks neat, but you know, we are probably 5 years away from wearable sensors that are accurate as what you're seeing today out of something like Metaverse or, you know, those kind of things. We're probably a decade away from things that are more accurate than what we see right now on RTC. So if you have a wearable sensor, why in God's name are you going to have a robot? People are walking the job site every day. You're going to integrate those into wearables, and that's going to be the solution for capture. I mean, it's crazy to think about buying a, you know, and at that point the sensors are going to be cheaper. Why are you going to go buy a, you know, $8,000 drone to fly a, you know, tiny little, you know, $100 sensor? It's just dumb. Put it on hard hat. Problem solving.
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
I'll share a differing thought. I think that I think Spot, that idea of an autonomous robot being able to go through a building and collect while nobody's there, I think is a huge piece. When we start thinking about robotics and automation, and this comes in with all of the different technology, I don't look at them like, is the robotic dog going to replace terrestrial scanning? But I think there's a huge fit for it, and I think there's scenarios that terrestrial scanning will never be replaced. Like Spot's not going to, at least not right now, lift itself up and do above ceiling scanning. And you know, there's going to be limitations, but when you look at the variety of projects using scanning, the huge architectural projects where that robotic dog could be walking through by itself, even if it ends up being a different technology on it and it's not a terrestrial scanner, it's a SLAM, it's a Navis technology, and the accuracy's there, but it can do it by itself without human interaction. I think that is going to be a big piece. Obviously, there's still things that have to be in play there because right now it's still manually controlled. Someone's following Spot, walking with it, but the long-term vision of there's a digital twin of a building. We already have accurate dimensions of the existing conditions. It has LiDAR sensors, just like an autonomous car, where the robot can see where it's going. I think it will get to the point that we will implement things like that.
So, yeah, you're talking about, okay, yeah, guys walking behind Spot, you know, controlling it. That doesn't really save any labor, right?
Not right now.
No, not right now. Maybe, you know, I don't know how Spot opens a door when he gets to a door.
Yep.
So there's some issues with that,
Yep.
but I think, you know, it could do something to help automate things. I'm just curious, because Sylvia and I were talking at lunch about, you know, the effect of the VLX on reducing the need for as much labor, right? You know, if you were going to go through with a static scanner and scan a building versus walking through with the VLX, you just saved a boatload of labor, plus being able to just load that thing up into the cloud and let it register and pop back the next morning, and you're like, I didn't have to spend any labor time on registering. So to me, that's like, wow, that's a huge, huge improvement to help as a business owner, my reduction of labor costs. So I don't know if you think there's any other technologies coming our way that are going to have that kind of impact.
So I know that right now we're all looking at like big things, right? The big lift, like the robots, and everything is extracted automatically. But we need to think back a few years, and we've had small incremental automation every single month or year. Think about RTC. There's automation, right? It pre-aligns your scan. So those happens all the time, right? You upload your photos to the cloud, and they're mapped to whatever floor plans. So all those things happen all the time, and I don't think we're going to see a big leap, but rather small increments. And they're always all of these improvements. They're augmenting our workflows. They're going to let's say release resources, and we can focus on other things. Will help us improve our processes. And in terms of what John said, that yes, like a tool like the VLX is probably gonna save what 60-70% in labor, but that's a good thing, because I think this industry is gonna grow at such a fast pace that we're not gonna be able to staff companies to support that growth. So automation, I think, is gonna be a huge support to help us just continue to provide value, and continue to keep up with the demand in the industry.
Totally agree. In fact, the class I gave earlier, I pronounced that the terrestrial laser scanner is dead, not really. But I think we are seeing an inflection point right now in the industry, where over the next 5 years, I think we are going to see sales of terrestrial laser scanners like RTCs, B20s, things like that. I think we're at or near the peak, and I think we're going to start to see sales of those instruments start to plateau and then fall off, because we're finally at that point where, for a significant number of use cases, what we're getting out of mobile instruments at an order of magnitude higher productivity is good enough. And so, while there will be uses for terrestrial laser scanners where accuracy is, we need a higher level of accuracy, a higher grade of reliability. I mean, if I think back to the jobs we were doing at Beck, probably 40-50% of those jobs could be done today with something like VLX. And then it's just like, instead of needing 4 terrestrial laser scanners, we probably only needed 2. And, I think we're going to start to see that. And the question is, does the growth of the industry overall counter that? Certainly, if you think you adjust it for growth, you're going to see that tail off in mobile systems, which are already growing fast. You're going to take, over the next 5 years, or something like that. So it's an interesting time.
And also, I think the automation, we're talking about processing, right? Capturing data, processing data. But also, I think most of the labor, if you look at our industry, most of the labor is in interpreting that data into some sort of model or represented geometry or line work. And if we can automate that process, I think that's where we can save a lot of labor and reinvest or refocus those resources on something else. I think that's where there's a huge opportunity there. Figure out how to classify point clouds, figure out how to extract that geometry automatically.
One more thing I want to share, and then go to a question. It just on the whole discussion of VLX, on mobile, on terrestrial going away. I was told this analogy once, and I like it. I changed it a little bit, but we have to think about these tools, all of these tools, the handheld, the backpack, the terrestrial, total stations, GPS, they all have different use cases. They're like writing utensils, right? There's a permanent marker, there's a whiteboard marker, there's a pencil. You don't use a pencil to write a check. Why? Because somebody can erase that and change the value. You don't use a permanent marker on a whiteboard. Why? Because then you can't wipe it off, you gotta throw away the whiteboard. we see those tools sometimes being used in the wrong way in the industry, where there's not enough understanding of, hey, why is this tool cheaper, or why is this tool faster? So a deeper understanding of the use case of it, because if it's a permanent marker, even if a better permanent marker comes out, you still don't want to use it on the whiteboard. So I think the industry still has a lot of growth to do in how much is being adopted. That I don't think terrestrial is going to go away. I don't think handheld's going to go away. I don't think mobile's going to go away. I think there's a lot of room to continue to increase the workload and adoption, because we're still barely in some industries. Like it's lacking, and it's still small use case. And we're seeing the industry move forward in the ideas of continuous scanning of sites, not just go out and scan and use that in design and throw away data, but the idea of, well, if it's getting faster and it's getting cheaper, let's start out with a quick use case of a mobile, and then when we get to a more critical position, let's go back with more accurate data and capture that during construction. And then after the project's done, let's go back and do a final scan and update the final as-built, so now we have a true digital twin, a living document of what's left at the building. Just wanted to share that.
You know, I completely agree with that, and you know, just like anything else, it's a tool, right? I mean, tools have changed over time. You know, I think that when I first started, I think I told you guys a couple times, we had the company had a Faro Photon. It was like big old 80-pound scanners. And it took about 5 minutes to take a crappy scan, you know, and after about an hour, battery died. You know, so it's the industry now has evolved to the point where I think we realize that scanners are going to get smaller, but yet more powerful. They're going to go longer. They're going to be more accurate, and they're going to just give us more and more data. And by the way, they're also going to get cheaper. Moore's law, right? I think we all know that. But something that Sylvia said I want to piggyback off of, because I think data interpretation and how this data is taken and being used by the industry, because most of my clients don't use scan data just by itself, because they don't care. 80% of my clients are architects. They don't really care about the scan data. I mean, if they're savvy enough, they could, and they could put it in there and they could kind of see, but otherwise it's kind of meaningless to them at the end of the day. For them, it's the end result of, you know, the actual build information model. How well is that developed? And kind of something that you said is how that data is being interpreted and the true kind of, you know, scan to BIM, you know, kind of holy grail is, you know, you scan a building and then throw it into Revit, and then, you know, doors get modeled and pipes get modeled, and, you know, you get, you know, just click a button and it just happens, you know. I think, now obviously it's not there, it might not be there for decades maybe, but I think as AI improves, I think as certain modeling elements become a little bit more standardized in terms of like walls. Right now we see it with piping all the time. We could see, you know, you can get a diameter and it becomes, I mean, clear edge that does that, right? I mean, it's there. So, but look back 10 years ago, it didn't exist. No, like it wasn't even close. I remember we were working on a project and there was like a rat's nest of pipes and ducts, and we're like, man, this stuff is sagging. Like, you know, and it was tough to actually take one individual pipe and just run it, you know, through. And now it's just automated practically, that aspect of it. So automation and how this data is interpreted across all other platforms, right? On the design side, for construction, for, you know, the end user life cycle of a building. I think that's really kind of, it's cool to see how this data is going to be used and the information that's going to be embedded into it. And you know, I think that's kind of a more interesting, you know, aspect of it, because I think there's a lot more avenues that this thing could kind of go in. You know, obviously on the scanning side, yeah, we see things that, you know, I mean, improved quality, you know, cheaper price, smaller size. But how that data is going to be used across all platforms and across all industries, kind of, it's going to be cool to see.
So I've got a question, just to show of hands. How many surveyors do we have in the room? We got a couple. Okay, so sometimes this is a hot topic, and you come from a survey background. But talking about whether things are going to be going away or not, what do you guys think about survey control, and will that be necessary?
I guess I'll start since we're a survey company, so we have a land surveying division, and to us, control is critical for most projects. And I think it's something that's not talked about enough in the industry as people are adopting scanners. People go out and buy a scanner and they think that the spec they were told that the scanner captures is the accuracy of the data set they're going to come out with on a job. They go out and do 50 scans and they're like, but the scanner is 1 millimeter accuracy. You're like, no, you have accumulated error in registration processes, and so many people in our industry don't understand what a survey control network even is and how it helps tighten down data sets. And I think that moving forward, that's going to be a critical piece. There are going to be improvements in scanning technologies and reality capture technologies that can have accurate data sets without survey. I'll say that. But I also think that the use cases that we're going to continue to see in using the technology is going to require a control network, so that when you go back the next week to do a progress scan and you tie into existing targets, now that's perfectly aligned because there's a network there. And what about the mix of technologies? If you're going to scan, when we combined drone and scanners, how do we get those two data sets together in a way that that building is actually aligned properly? Because there's a survey network that's on the inside of the building and on the outside of the building. And a lot of people don't understand survey in depth enough to know that that's the process to use. The more we're going to see hybrid solutions, the more we're going to see continuous data sets on sites, that survey is going to be a big piece.
Also, I think that survey control is going to be even more critical if you're using SLAM, right? And with the drift that you get even from the VLX, there's no way you can ensure even not relative accuracy. So
The methods of survey control right now, do you think there's any way to automate that?
Well, that's what I was going to say. Wherever you find pain, that is where automation goes and tries to solve problems, typically. I mean, that's usually, so it's like control itself, whether it's survey control or whether it's an arbitrary control network or whatever it is, it's only going to be more important. The more you want to use laser scans, the more you want to use them for different use cases, the more you want to combine them together across periods of time. All of those things require control networks so that you can have a common coordinate system, right? That's the only way that works. But probably because we know it's really hard for people and a lot of them don't understand it, this is one of those areas where I think you're going to see a lot of innovation. And SLAM itself is one of the innovations that's attempted to solve that problem that maybe hasn't turned out quite the way everybody hoped. But I think we're going to see a lot of innovation, maybe not automation per se, but a lot of innovation around this, because I think for scanning to truly kind of, for reality capture, it's not even called scanning, for this reality capture to truly democratize, it's not that control will go away, it's that control will be, the user will be unaware. And so I think, what you're looking at is there's all sorts of technologies that people are researching right now on the vendor side that basically hide the control network from the end user. They don't have to know about the control network, but there are active layers that are being tracked. And so that gives you positioning at a very high degree of accuracy. That is your control network. You just don't have to know about it, right? And so there's all sorts of really interesting things there. That's where I think you're going to see. And then also data sharing. Like, once we have all this data up in the cloud, which one of these days will have happen, let's say you've got data that Matt's collected that's on a very good survey control and it has, certified errors associated with it, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm walking around the job site with my iPhone. Well, as long as that relative sensor is hooked into the data that was captured on control, now that's the control. It's not a point on the ground. It's a data set that's on control that my iPhone is now referencing as I capture data, right? Like, that's how control is going to be done in the future to make it easier for, I don't know, somebody that's never picked up this, for my daughter to pick up the scanner and go scan and have it be, plus or minus 2 mils global accuracy with an iPhone, right? How do you do that? Well, it's not that hard to do, actually. There's just a whole lot of infrastructure that has to get built out to do that.
Well, one more thing I'll throw out is, even in the current if you take a scanner out, whether SLAM, whether terrestrial, if you take a scanner out and scan 400 feet around a building and you register that data and you don't see, even if you don't see overlaps or misregistrations, if something comes up in a lawsuit or in a project, how can you verify what the accuracy of your scan is without a secondary control method? The reports that come out of the registration softwares, honestly, to me, is one of my frustrations. A couple weeks ago, I got a project where someone registered 800 scans, and I open up this project because they said they have issues. Over on the right, I see green letters, and it's like, oh, the whole data set's within, 8 millimeters. Then you open it up and you slice and you look, and the whole building's tilted, and there's floors that are 10 inches on top of each other, and the walls are sliced. And so if you don't have a secondary control method right now, you can't prove an accuracy of a global registration. And so those ideas that Kelly's talking about, I think that's amazing. The thought of in the future, let's have installed things in a building that as you're scanning, it hits. But I think that initial control layout has to be done, has to be surveyed. And the reason that professional land surveyors are professional land surveyors is they study how to build a control network properly to a certain accuracy. And now they also are liable for that. And so I think it's an important piece for people to think about of what is the accuracy that your project is trying to achieve, what's your client's requirement, and can you actually meet that or prove that you meet it?
And I have a question for you regarding the control. So one of the challenges that I've seen over the years is if you laser scan buildings and you have a high rise, it's quite complicated to run control up floors.
Yeah.
Right. Because you have short turns, very sharp angles, and you accumulate errors. Actually, John and I will work on a project, and the floor plate was huge, but just 4 floors, and we accumulated more than an inch and a half of error.
Yep.
So the control was actually not usable. We were getting better results just by using the cloud-to-cloud and targets in order to get a tighter registration.
Yep.
So how do you solve that problem?
I think, that's a good question. And it depends on the use case, what are you doing with the data? When we've done renovation jobs that are in active construction and windows are out, or there's a way for us to shoot control up to other floors, that's what we typically do. Is we'll shoot into the ground level, we'll shoot up to the 15th floor, we'll shoot into every floor if we want to try to get extra control in there. If there's a way for you to do that externally, then that helps. There's limitations, right? If there's no way to shoot in control from exterior and you're tied to interior, stairways are your best bet. And if you wanted to try both, you could try with survey, traversing through stairs and getting points in, but also do scans. And even if it's not that tight of a scenario, surveyors can still mess up, right? So we've had scenarios as well where someone put up a wrong rod height or somebody measured something wrong and survey control can come out off. And we've had times as well that the scan data actually did register better without the survey because something missed. So I think it's a case by case, what can you accomplish in that scenario? If it's critical to get as tight as possible, I'd say do both, because at least you have something to check or compare against one way or another.
I'm going to just kind of dive a little deeper into the future now, because we all have been hearing about the Metaverse, right? And so I think we'd be remiss not to at least bring that up and get the panel's thoughts on what this Metaverse thing is, and is it going to impact us in any way moving forward? Anyone want to take that?
One thing that I think we all agree is going to pull a lot of resources from what we're doing right now from this industry into creating assets for that environment. And also probably is going to create even more opportunity to use other tools and to use photogrammetry and create those environments. So that's one aspect of of it, right? Just the human resources. But then I think it just is going to open probably more opportunity in terms of business models. I mean, we talked about, or at least what we've heard from others, that you'll be able to sell assets in those environments. So in the past, I mean, Matt, you said that, hey, you're scanning a building and you're throwing away the data. Once you create a deliverable, and you're sending that to the architect or whoever the end client is. But so it's a one-use deliverable, which kind of sucks, right? You spend all those resources, and the client uses once, he extracts the information that they need, and then it's going to end up somewhere on a server. But now we have the opportunity to create assets that have a multi-use, right? So it generates an opportunity. It has an opportunity for us to have scalable business models. So that's my take on it.
I have a question. So how do we get access to this metaverse? I know it's as dumb as like, how do you get inside the internet? You know what I mean? But
I'll explain a little higher level real quick. So obviously we've all seen the change of some names of social media, Facebook to Meta.
Yeah.
That I think is what has launched a big discussion around Metaverse for the general public. The sales idea from them is we're going to see the future become a lot of immersive environments. You're going to be able to sit at home, put VR on, and be in your virtual office space with employees and actually sitting in meeting spaces. And that's launching a lot of brainstorming. And people are investing a lot of money in how can we utilize this throughout different industries. When you talk about the metaverse in general, it's still a big discussion. Is there going to be one digital world you can immerse yourself into and the globe is digitized? But people also talk about individual metaverses where a company could have their own metaverse. So an example would be a car dealership, right? Say XYZ car dealer makes a digital metaverse, and people could virtually put on a headset and log into their dealership and walk up and meet a salesperson that's standing there as an avatar. And you'd be able to see high-res digital models of their cars and swipe through and change the color. It's the idea of, is there things going on in society now that can be done virtually? That's what the push is there. For kind of our industry, it's almost along the lines of digital twin metaverse. Like the idea of what can we do with digitizing a business, a facility, an oil and gas facility, an airport. If you have a full digital twin and we start seeing more IoT sensors and more AR glasses coming out that are better and cheaper and faster, tied into something you're already wearing, or you open your phone in the airport, and because there's that digital twin, there are smart sensors, now you have quick wayfinding. You can say, hey, take me to gate B21 instead of like getting lost. And so to me, it's the idea of the mix of robotics, of digitization of real world into digital world. And then it's also the mix of virtual environments and AR into different businesses.
So it's a matter of like, I guess also sort of, access, I guess. I had a professor about, I don't know, like 15 years ago or something, mention Second Life, the little avatar, thing. And they're like, yeah, it's a whole new environment, and you could, I think somebody was like designing for, like some architect was putting together like infrastructure, and it's like, they're getting paid for it, I guess, or something, and it's like, well, this might be the future, like this Second Life or whatever. And it's like, it's a platform, right? So if there's a series of, different companies or different, it's a matter of like, hey, I've scanned, let's say 100 historic sites. They're all digitized, it's almost like an archived, series of these things. How do I here you go, upload it and now give me some money,
Well,
Like
I guess that's
to-
the question,
To get like a practice, because I think the metaverse concept, what we're really talking about is in some ways it's a monetization strategy for a digital twin, right? And so, like, think about something like the Smithsonian, which I know Sylvia has done some scans and worked with scans and done a digital twin for the Smithsonian, right? So, you know, if you think about something like that, well, they've also scanned usually all of their exhibits. So they have really, really high resolution, typically handheld, like Martech or whatever, one of those scanners, right? So they have digitized assets of their collection, and now they have a digitized version of their building. And access is a big question. Well,
What is the ratio between, you know, collections that are exhibited versus the ones that are in storage, right? It's like
yeah, they have entire collections. So this is a great example.
95% in storage or more.
Yeah, so a huge amount in storage, but there's always this problem. Well, how do you expose the exhibits at the Smithsonian to somebody that can't afford to travel to DC? Well, if they can put on a pair of VR goggles and you have a metaverse, you have a digital twin, and you have the ability to then, from anywhere in the world, hop in and go look and research something at the Smithsonian. Actually, oh gosh, you could actually pick up the exhibit in the metaverse because it's not the real thing, and you could actually spin the thing over and look at it and look at the writing on the scribing on the backside that you can't see when it's placed down. So it's like, it's a, you know, and then that's the digital version of the real world, but oh yes, by the way, you have 95% of the collection you can't see. Well, they could make extensions to the building. They could take parts of the building and copy it.
Or use the same environment and just swap the exhibit.
100 times larger version of the Smithsonian with all the collection exposed in little custom designed cases. Well, somebody's got to design those cases. That's an architect that's getting paid to design the additional building space that will never get built. And who's done the scans that are going to be used as a basis to colorize those meshes so it looks like the real building?
The right dimensions.
We did make sure they're right. So it's like, to me, it's a business opportunity. It's another way to monetize the data that we're capturing and collecting. You know, so it's just an interesting thing.
And in this example that I just gave Kelly, I think, you know, we all like stories, right? Like to hear stories and tell stories. And a lot of times when we go and visit a historic site, there might be some writing on somewhere that tells you something about a site. But a lot of times you just walk around and you don't quite absorb as much as you like. But if you visit these places in a virtual environment, I mean, imagine that you take the actual surface of those sites and you pair it with a nice story, something that you will retain, you'll be able to tell somebody.
And then you get to take a meta selfie. And if you want to get really meta, then you have your digital meta phone that then you take your meta selfie with, and then you turn it around and you meta scan something with the fake digital sensor as a recollection, and then you bring that mesh home with you, and you can print it out, 3D print it, and put it in your room. How freaking weird is no? I'm serious. Like, just think about it. It's like you're digitally inhabiting a space. You're digitally capturing something that's digital, and then you're bringing it back and 3D printing it as a keepsake.
And you tell your 4-year-old daughter about it because she's not old enough to wear the VR. That's it.
Yeah, that fit on her head, right? Yeah, she can play with a 3D printed version of it.
All right, we're just going to do a quick time check here. We're at like 14 minutes left. So I want to see if there's anyone else out in the audience that has any questions.
The man came back in.
The man came back in. Any questions for the panel?
I can't find the mic.
It's
right here.
Oh, there.
You project pretty well. You don't need one.
And it's right there on a stand.
Oh, okay.
So like
You can be the mic.
Great.
No, I don't have a question. Thank you very much.
All right, then I want to get into something that Kelly had brought up in our prior discussion before the session today. What do you see as the future for women in our industry?
I don't know. I mean, I think we look out in the room here and we can see the representation's not so great. Thank you. But I don't know. I think it's an interesting challenge in our industry. I think I don't know actually specifically what the figures are in survey. I'm more familiar with the figures in architecture. And actually, on the architecture side, things are looking quite good because I think last time I checked, like 5 years ago, there's more women graduating with architecture degrees than men, so it's just a matter of time. But I don't know. I mean, I think we don't have any good representation on the panel, and that's a shame. But I think the best thing we can do as people that are currently sitting on the panel is encourage the women we do have in our profession to get more engaged in conferences. So, and it's, there's other representation as well we can talk about. I think we need to do better as an industry getting more diversity in it because that tends to lead to better results and better outcomes and more diverse thinking. So,
Kelly, do you think there's, why do you think there aren't more women in this industry? I mean, because like, I've got one woman working for my company, but it's hard to even find candidates right now, let alone a woman candidate. Why don't you think there are more women in the industry?
I think here's where I think marketing is important. I think we need to do a better job of marketing the badass stuff that we all do. Right? I mean, it's pretty freaking cool. We play with lasers every day. I mean, come on. How can we not get more people interested in doing this, right? But I don't know. I think surveying is seen as an old, stodgy profession, and it has a reputation of being a boys' club. And so, I think part of it is actively working to change that image. And sometimes that means working really hard to, market people that are in the industry that are outside of that typical idea, but also just getting out there and saying, hey, we play with lasers every day. It's pretty badass.
Ken, you got a question back there?
Not so much a question as a comment. And just, I have had for many years recruited students at a prestigious university on the East Coast. When I started recruiting there were very few women in the class. When I ended, almost half of the class were women. And there was a lot of STEM and that sort of thing going on to try and attract more women to the business. But another look at that is I had a discussion recently with someone who worked in was interested in airlines and airplanes and there was a panel for this particular organization where they were asking the same question, why not more women in the industry? And the answer was sort of like, okay, the people that were on the panel today have been in the industry for 30 years. And there weren't that many women that had been in the industry for 30 years. But they're coming up. And so, it's not next year that we may have all women up there, but it might be 30 years from now when there's that level of experience in the women that go into that business.
Well, and I think, at a typical survey conference, I do think there's a longer timeline. I'll say I have precisely 15 years of experience doing this, and I think also for some topics, I don't think you need 30 years of experience to speak intelligently about it. I think 5 years of experience is probably sufficient for certain things. So I think we need to work harder to try and improve representation up here on the stage. Personally, I think we also need to work a lot harder to do things because, while we may have the same number of women entering the industry coming out of schools, women leave the industry at a much higher rate than men, and that's going to further prolong the problem. And I think some of that is choices, and everybody makes the choice that's right for them. But some of that's also discrimination. Some of that's also, just the fact that, if you take maternity leave and stay out of the profession for 3 years, it's really hard to find a job after that. And it shouldn't be. It's not like 3 years your brain went away, So I think there's a lot of work we need to do to improve things. You know, just waiting 30 years, I don't think is a sufficient strategy. I totally agree with the point you're making, and I know you're not actually saying just wait 30 years. I know you can. I know that's not what you're saying.
I am saying that
Yeah.
I mean, COVID could have changed a lot of things here. I mean, my wife and I both had to go virtual for the last couple of years, and she's probably not going back to the office because she's found that she can do what she needed to do virtually. And if you can do that, and you can do it at home where you've got some help with taking care of the kids, or maybe, you know, the husband stays home and takes care of the kids and the one works, you trade off, you know, you can make it work.
Well, and this, you know, the challenge, of course, is it's very hard to operate a scanner remotely from a computer, but that's where the robot dogs come in.
Yeah, I want to share a thought on just the conversation as well. Obviously, there's no one answer to it, but I think just the encouragement of not putting footholds on anybody, right? From age, from gender, from role, how long they've been in it, because you know, if you really look, you'll find somebody who's been in the industry 2 years that actually is technically already further along than someone that's been in it for 15. I've found that with employees. You know, I've hired people who had 10 years experience. Great worker. I hired someone who had 0 experience, and in 2 years, just because they're passionate, they can learn quickly, they exceed. And even my story, like, I started a business at 24 years old, never went to college, you know, I was just driven and pushing ahead. And part of that was, you know, being young. A lot of people are like, oh, you know, what are you doing? And I think we see that a lot in our industry, and in a lot of industries. So I think just being very open to letting anybody have the chance at coming in and learning. And that's the other thing that we need in order to grow, right? We have the resource issue. Everybody's trying to hire right now, scanning people, modeling people. The best thing we can do is bring in anybody, bring in fresh talent out of college, bring in young kids and let them learn about these technologies. They're already adopting to new technologies faster than people that are already midway through their career, because that's what they're growing up with. So I think paying attention to bringing in the youth, and again, on the gender side, let anybody fill the role that they're interested in and encourage them.
Hire the person, not the profile.
Yeah, and also I was thinking, you know, in some cases, you know, women and men have different interests, right? I mean, Kelly says, you know, we play with lasers, but how do we know that, you know, on average, men and women are interested in the same thing? We don't. So that's also, you know, might play a factor in why we don't see as many women as men in the industry. Because, you know, in architecture, I think it would be great to convince women from architecture to join our companies. I think that's a great asset. But how do we maintain and keep those employees, those women, long term in the and, you know, motivate and make sure that we have a mission that they align with, and they want to continue to work in this industry. So, you know, interest, that's also a factor to consider. And we don't know if we all have, you know, we're passionate about technology at the same level.
So we have 5 minutes left, and there's a question back here.
I just want to share.
Yeah. Hold on, you got a mic over here?
Can I share something before?
Yeah.
So, in my company, I have 18 people.
So I have 18 people working in the office, and 4 are men and 14 are women. So it's possible.
And what do you attribute that to? Do you have a larger pool of women around you, or are you just like, I'm not hiring any men, or what do you?
I think it just happened. I don't know.
Charisma?
Charisma. Yeah,
You're a woman magnet?
Thank you. And I think in the university that in the city there are 20 people in the specialty of surveying, 100% women. So
That's fantastic.
I think that answers the interest question.
Just one comment here.
Yeah, over here for Ravi.
Just one quick comment, and most of you may not know me. I'm actually from the University of Florida, from the construction management program. Sylvia, I think I listened to you. In architecture, we have a lot of women. In construction, less, but there's a huge uptick in the number of women right now. We are graduating more number of women right now compared to, let's say, 5 or 6 years ago. I'm talking about undergrads and grads. Even PhD students, currently I have 6 PhD students, 2 of them are women. It never happened. I graduated 6 already, all are men. But now the current 6 students are all, 2 of them are women. So things are changing, and it's because of the technology. It's not like we are actually carrying chains for surveys anymore. It's because of all the technologies we have, it's changing. So thank you.
Actually, in the last 2 months, I interviewed 10 people. 9 were women, only 1 man.
Wow. That's great. Well, maybe the trend is
I
starting to
suggest the
tilt.
future will look a little bit more equally distributed.
Yeah.
That's good.
Next year's panel. Sorry, guys.
I've done enough.
I just wanted to make one more comment on that subject of interest. I hired an Asian into my company early on. He became interested in construction and so on because he grew up in Chinatown, and there was a program to keep kids out of gangs. And that program, he learned to paint and to do other stuff. But we have within USIBD a woman who got interested in construction at age 7 because her grandfather was in that, and so that piqued her interest, and we hired her in recently. So just in case you didn't know that.
That's great. Well, I think we're at time here. I just want to give a big round of applause to our panel here.